financial reporting and fiscal practices meeting to order. While Chip is here, and I want to respect your time, I was thinking we have basically two things to review. The most pressing is on Monday, we're hoping to make considerations to the council, or recommendations rather, and that revolves around your findings around, and I know Jim last meeting had a list of accounts, but you have done a further search and done an analysis of which account should be maybe consolidated and put into the general fund. So I just kind of wanted, well, I'm on two computers, so I'm going to pull up sugar. I wanted to pull up but I know Lori has it printed, but if you could walk through which accounts you're recommending and maybe the nuances and reasons why, because not all of them will be, but I don't know if you're able to do that. I'm trying to pull it up on here, but I'm gonna do my best. Okay.
Do you want to bring that over to the table? Or?
I'm nervous because it's all tidy and organized for this purpose, but now that considering sharing the screen.
Just move it, Carter, if it's not helpful there. We haven't settled on it.
No, let me do the thing where I email this spreadsheet to you. Yes, okay. Sorry everybody, getting the technology in order, because I gotta email this to the city manager to display this. Okay, as a viewer. Okay. All right.
Can you get it there, Carter? Do you want me to try and share this?
I'm getting it, it's just taking an extra second.
That's it right there.
Okay, great.
Now it's loading. Alrighty. I should do it. Okay, we're getting there. Thank you for your patience. Oops, this button. There we go. Okay. Is this an alright view? Can people, I want to make it bigger though.
We can make it bigger on our own end.
Yeah, okay. Blurry, but, okay. So what we're looking at, Chip, it seems like we have noted the columns that we should suggest to the council with that column D with a little X in them. Is that correct?
No, the X actually represents what was found on the PDF that had just the account name and the balance.
Okay.
And so like if you look at row 6, in the financials, the reappraisal fund money market account says 107,000, and what Jim gave me said the account balance should be 125,000.
Ah, okay, thank you for catching that.
So,
Yeah.
so those are, and then the list he gave me of all the bank accounts did not even include the general fund checkbook. So I was like, okay, so this is not all of our cash. And then you have the latest one that I returned that actually says what bank each of these is in. Because I questioned, just because it's on the balance sheet, doesn't mean it's physically a bank account. So that was again, he sent a PDF and I took the PDF and loaded it into the spreadsheet for you to see.
Okay.
So your question was, the suggested motion for city treasurer to take action to be made by the city council, correct?
Yes. Thanks for restating.
And just trying to bring you back.
Yes.
So I have the members present read that motion?
Yes. I'm hearing a yes.
Yeah, I
yes.
read it.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
this
I
from
can go
an
down, yeah,
email?
I got it down, I didn't bring it, I got it upstairs.
Okay.
I'll bring it on in.
I can read it here too.
Is this from an email? Because this is being recorded.
Yes.
And if it's something the rest of us haven't had access to, speaking in code.
Understood. There are specifics, and I was hoping that, well, so if we're gonna go down, we're walking through these that we can see on the screen now, approximately from line 60 to 67.
Is that all of them?
I think what we're looking for, Chip, would be if you could just walk us through the spreadsheet so the folks who haven't seen it have seen it, and so that the task force members fully understand what it is we're recommending. And I think, Carter, if you or someone at the end of this call could create a one-page summary that says the task force is recommending we close the following accounts that hold and uncommit the funds that have been placed in those accounts to help us manage cash flow in the short term.
Yes.
So I think we just want to be sure, Chip, that we're including the ones that need to be included and not including the ones that shouldn't be for some reason.
Yes, so I'll read the motion, because I think Jim and I will then type it out for you. My suggested motion is for one council member to say, I move the city council instruct the city treasurer to close the following accounts and place the money into the general fund checking account. The list of accounts
Everybody got it?
is put out there. I won't read the account number, I'll just read the title. Reappraisal Fund Money Market Account, Bike Path Fund, Vector Sinking Fund, Tennis Court Fund, MMA, Coventry Street Sinking, MMA, GP Restoration, MPG 2013, the big ones that we're talking about, Water Tower Sinking Fund, Water Treatment Facility Replacement Fund, Reservoir Cover Fund, Wastewater Treatment Fund, Facility Sinking Fund, and in the wastewater fund, the Vector Sinking Fund. It goes on to state, for the purpose of reducing the water and sewer fund debt to the general fund and consolidating accounts for cash flow.
Yes.
The note at the bottom of the same email says the amounts listed on the spreadsheet are as noted and subject to change at the time of closure, so I would not call out the amount in the motion for each account to close.
Yep. Yep. All right, and
And then the spreadsheet's on the screen. And so if you scroll to the top of the spreadsheet first, because I listed them in the order of their general ledger account number.
okay.
And the first one you'll see reappraisal fund, MMA, which is line 6. The financial software says it's got 107,000 in it. Jim says there's 125,000 in it. So, I think I know that difference is fiscal year 24's contribution never got reported in the computer.
Okay.
The next account is Bike Path Fund, 76 whole cents sitting at M&T Bank. It's just ridiculous to carry an account.
Yeah.
The next one, Vector Sinking, which is like 10. That has $117.62. At one point, I understood that the sinking fund for the Vector truck purchase was split between water, sewer, and general fund. The primary holder of money is actually the wastewater fund or sewer fund. So this account has been just sitting there, and every month somebody's making a journal entry for a penny or two. The next one is the tennis court fund MMA, line 13. Has $7,076.68 in it. It's accumulated, that's what the GL says. He gave it $72.76. So there's a difference between what the GL says and what the bank account says. The tennis court fund is one of those that is within your budget to contribute to annually. And in FY25, there's a contribution supposed to be given to it as well.
Okay.
But I'll also note, on behalf of those that had a vested interest to keep it separated, I did not touch the Walmart fund.
Yeah. Yeah, that's.
The next one, the next one, Coventry Street sinking. NEK, $15 in it. I'm not sure what you would do in streets with $15. You can't buy the paintbrush to do a line. The next one on the list, GP Restoration MPG 2013. My best guess is this is Gardner Park Restoration, residual funds from a full painting grant in 2013 that have probably been used and the account never got closed.
Yeah.
Because that whole Gardner Park was a lengthy discussion we had as well. The next one is down near the bottom in Fund 9, so it's going to be near the bottom of the list. The ones that are probably in the square that I highlighted.
Yeah, okay.
So, Water Tower Sinking Fund is in Fund 9. This, I think your water tower project is something that's ongoing now, about to end, and we need money for it. So that cash is, if you will, that cash has already been spent on this project. It's just the general fund covered it for at least this amount of money, and the general fund now needs this money. Next one down is Water Treatment Facility Replacement Fund, which should be line 66, which I've got to roll up to see it, but that's the next account that just logically is in order. The next account after that's the Reservoir Cover Fund, like 55,000. And so those three accounts out of the water fund right now will cover the due to from that's owed to the general fund. However, that may have changed since this week there was another payroll and AP warrant. And so the due to from obligation may have increased. But this is a start towards reducing that number. And the last two are above in the wastewater treatment sinking fund and the Vector sinking. 117,000 to 165,000. That those close some debt owed to the general fund taxpayers. And so intentionally, I did not name the amount of money because all of these at the time that you close will have an interest update to the date of closure. And we're actually going to take all the money we can and put it in the general fund.
Right.
Now, is James there today?
Yeah.
All right. So one of the primary reasons of asking city council to give the instruction is Jim was not comfortable taking this action on his own to close these accounts. Making it a formal action by instruction from city council will make Jim more comfortable to actually take that action.
Understood.
So Chip, I have 2 questions, specific questions about this. The first is, in your judgment, is it necessary for us to do this in 2 parts, where we move the fund balances, close those accounts and move the fund balances all into the general operating account? A separate action from uncommitting any previous commitments that council has placed on those funds, or should we just allow those commitments to stand with the understanding that if something's going to get spent in that category later on, we're going to have to come up with the money to cover it one way or another anyway?
So if you're looking for an answer from me, according to an email I got this afternoon from Jim, all the capital commitments were released by a motion made by you January 27th at a city council meeting. And it's passed.
My understanding of that motion was that we were doing it for everything that was not, what I understood us to be doing in that instance was not managing funds that had actually been placed in these accounts. We were talking about uncommitting any commitments that had been made in an unspoken way by passing budgets with capital expenditures in them that never got realized in any way.
So, and I realized, and by using the term minutes ago, moving the fund balance, I think all of those terms you are referring to are simply referring to a bank account balance.
Yes, okay.
Right? And so moving bank account balances does not alter the fund balance. It does alter how much money in the due to from is owed between accounts. So I think the uncommitted funds did not specify, at least in the minutes that I read, only if they were uncommitted and didn't have a bank account. It didn't specify that in the minutes. It didn't specify whether or not that was also the Recreation Trust Fund, whether that was several others. There's a Maury S. Pearl Fund. There's several funds out there that are restricted. The word capital was used, and then you have to ask the question, which one of these do you consider capital?
Yeah.
And so that's what I posed in the email today was, you know, it's clear what they want, it's not clear what they want. So this action primarily is purposely being done to put money into your general checking account. It is money that is owed, again, primarily from water and sewer to the general fund. It in no way impacts surplus or deficit in the general fund. It only impacts adding about $600,000 or $700,000 in cash to the general fund checkbook.
Okay, I think that answers my question. And it also answers my second question, which is that in this list, the only fund that I hear you mention in this particular list that is a legally restricted fund is the tennis court fund. But if we're not worrying about, we're not trying to change the designations on these, all we're doing is moving it so that we have access to it. then that legally designated or restricted account for the tennis court will remain regardless, so we don't need to specify it.
So if any of these have a legal obligation to be restricted, Jim and I started setting up liability accounts to hold the value of obligation. The value of obligation is not necessarily in a cash account. That's what I referred to as accounting by banking.
Yes.
Versus saying, I have all my pooled cash in one place, and I'm quite sure that most households do the same thing. They don't have a checkbook for every obligation they have. They choose what bills they're going to pay, and they know what obligations they have. So if there's any others like that, like the Coventry Street Sinking Fund with $15, I'm closing it because it doesn't make sense to have an account with $15 in it. There are others that are like that I haven't said close them because I'm not clear why, what they hold, and if they are just starting, like 2 of them for $50, or whether they really should be consolidated.
Well, those two, Chip, I was told to open 2 accounts at the bank on those 2 accounts. For one is all grant income and the other's for, what is it, Rick? NRBC or something like that? Is he on?
Oh, all right. Yes, in the NRBC, they still have on that spreadsheet of restricted, committed, and assigned fund balances, like the 4th or 5th row down, that it says you have $240,000 at the end of 23 or the end of 24. And we don't know of any bank account or any record in the financials that reflects that 240,000 exists.
Yeah,
So-
there's no account for it that I'm aware of.
Well, if we have to account for it, then we're going to have to add that as a restriction. And the question is, where's that restriction? Is that restriction in water, sewer, general, or one of the other funds? And that's where I still haven't seen the FY24 audit. So it's hard for me to try to ascertain where things might belong.
Do you guys have any questions on this list of restrictions?
I think the only question that I have, and I'm just trying to make sense of it, we're closing accounts because we don't really need them, but it doesn't mean that we're moving the money, like for instance, you know, all these that he's recommended, Coventry the sinking fund, the tennis court fund, but next year we might be moving money back into those. Is that what I'm hearing? We're still bound to them, but we're not.
No, that's part of the puzzle of the January 27th actual motion and intent, because the commitments that were made in the list on that spreadsheet that says restricted by city council.
Mm-hmm.
And that means city council also has the authority to unrestrict them. And there are 20, 25 of them that are like that. And that's what's been presented and is part of your audit results, I presume. But it is not within your financials being recorded that way. On that specific spreadsheet, it says your unassigned fund balance is a deficit of $118,000. Meaning deficit. So I don't see that in your financials in NEMRIC at all, which is one of the reasons that that audit is important, to try to tie it out to the financials you have and present to the board. So one of the things I talked about earlier this week was to try to give the board the balance sheet and the budget status report primarily for the taxation fund, general fund, and then water and sewer. But based on the newfound knowledge that the balance sheets really don't tell the story correctly, I'm not sure it's useful information. It certainly is different than what the city council has ever seen, but all I can tell you is we're still a work in progress.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes.
Chip, I think that there's a distinction. I'm just a regular citizen here. I think there's a distinction when I read the state statutes between all the water and sewer funds and the general fund, and what can be set up in terms of reserves. And it seems from what I read, the only reserves that could be set up in water and sewer are the ones that are basically 15% of the total can be put into a capital fund. And I assume back when the amounts that were put into something, let's say, called the reservoir fund or something that was called the water tower fund, they were reserve funds that were taken, the money was taken out of the water and sewer funds and put into what I would call a reserve fund. That's the only way you could reserve money for these projects within water and sewer. Now, if they're in what I would consider a reserve fund, then in order to get them out, and I'm not saying we shouldn't get them out, but in order to get them out, according to the state statute, the monies can't be taken out for any purposes other than for the purpose they were established for. So if you're telling me that, for instance, we're going to take the water tower fund money out and use it for paying for the water tower, that's legit in my mind. But if you're going to take the reservoir fund money out and use it for just some general fund purposes, you need the citizens' approval for that. And we have probably time to get that approval. But it does say that when such a reserve fund is established, that the only way that you can take money out is that the voters must vote at a special meeting that it is okay for it to be used for other purposes. So I just want to ask you to think about whether or not those funds need to be handled differently, those reserve funds need to be handled differently, or you have a semantic way around it. But that seems pretty clear that you may need voter approval to get certain of those water and sewer funds out of their, what I would call, reserve situation. What do you think?
So, let's start with the water tower sinking fund. Did we build one?
I'm sorry? I don't even know if that's for the east or the west side. You have to decide whether it's the east water tower or the west water tower that we put that money in for, because it was specified over the years which is which.
But it kind of doesn't matter, Ann, to Chip's point. If both towers have been built at this point, then it doesn't matter. We've satisfied the obligation.
I think the additional monies that went in were for the purposes of maintenance of those water towers. Not for the east side. I don't think we put any money extra in for the east side, but if it's the west side, that could be maintenance money.
I guess, let me try again. So what I understood you to be saying, Chip, is that if all we do is close these accounts and move the cash into our cash account without making a statement that we are, uncommitting or repurposing these funds for something, then the purpose for which they were intended still exists in our bookkeeping.
Right, and the methodology is we can establish the liabilities of obligation without having the cash account. So it's a function of accounting. So we can set up, which you already have, liabilities for which you don't have any cash. And the cash purpose, this happens every day. Water and sewer money is deposited into the general fund for operations and debt payments constantly. And that same money that is held for reserves can be an item on the balance sheet that says we have an obligated fund balance for the sinking fund, for the replacement fund for the reservoir. It does not mean we have to have a physical bank account for it.
Yeah, I think that's what I was asking earlier. We maintain the line, but we don't have a physical bank account.
Well, the type of account that is recorded in is different. Right now, these are all recorded as assets, and they contribute to what is perceived to be a working fund balance. And instead, it's a committed fund balance, and the asset doesn't exist in cash. Because really, if we wanted to play the game, then water and sewer would have stopped paying bills years ago because they didn't have money.
I don't want to get stuck here, but Ann, is there anything else you want to say about this before we move on?
I want to ask a question.
Pam's got a hand up, so, yeah.
You suggested, Chip, that there's a strong possibility that the money just isn't there, and that you require the audit, this year's audit, to know that. Have you looked at the previous audit?
I'm not seeing any audits.
Why not?
I'll send you an audit Monday morning.
Because we're not there yet, Pam. We're just trying to take it one step at a time. So we're starting by trying to figure out what the balance sheet actually is. And then we'll try and do our level best to figure out how it matches to last year's audit and this year's audit and make sure they reconcile appropriately.
To your question, I'm still utterly confused. You know, we always say, "Ann, you're so concrete," or I say that all the time. It doesn't seem to match up that you can take monies out of a fund that has been reserved for a purpose and put it somewhere else for another purpose without getting the voters okay. That's where I feel I am. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I hear that. I'll just say the obligation remains. So we're not changing the obligation of those funds. We're simply changing where the funds are being held.
And if you want to look at the reverse condition, shall we go to the taxpayers and ask if it's okay to spend $2 million of taxpayers' money to meet the obligations of the water and sewer fund?
Which is effectively what's been happening over the last decade.
It's built up.
Right. Because the water and sewer fund did not have enough money to pay its own bills, and the money was spent out of the cash reserve for the operation budget.
Except the water and sewer account was being ripped off by the addition of various other components that never
Yeah, let's not
belonged.
go, I hear you, Pam. We've had this conversation ad nauseum. It's not useful right now.
But it may be true.
Yeah.
Just because it's true doesn't mean that's what all we can do at this point is try and figure out how to be as honest and transparent as we can be about every move we're making. That's all I know how to do.
And your biggest problem is that you have an obligation to the bank of $1.8 million as a line of credit that they, at this moment, have said they're not going to renew for you. So even all the money that you've got in the bank, which you don't even have enough to pay that, That's what our goal is, to get cash available so we can pay off $1.8 million line of credit before June 30, so that we can start over with the bank, trying to get a tax anticipation note and not long-term borrowing. You do have to, for purposes of wastewater and I think water, you still need to borrow money to cover projects that are about to be completed before June 30, that money's been spent, bond authority was granted by the public, but the process of applying to the bond bank was not adequately done. And so we can't go get the money to cover debt we already incurred as the projects are done. The bond bank typically starts with the engineering, design, and construction, and then the bond bank takes over a bond anticipation note and makes it long-term. That never took place here. You spent money you had, and now you're out of money.
In that meeting, Chip, you mentioned the other thing I wanted to have you speak to is that we have been overstating some assets in our operational budget. Could you speak to that a little bit more for everybody at the table?
Sure. The methodology of budgeting, which is also included in FY26 budget presented and adopted, there's a line item that is listed as revenue that is called state tax adjustment, that has somewhere $200,000 or more budgeted, as if that is excess revenue for the city, so that they do not have to raise property taxes. The reality is that that's actually the state contributing towards a payment on a property tax bill. So I'm not sure how long that line item's been in place, but for every year that you budgeted that and didn't raise that in taxes, is a year you shorted yourself on cash. And if the number is 200,000 and it's 10 years, then that's $2 million you failed to collect in cash in your general fund over a decade. It also contributes to why the line of credit is so high. And it's not only water sewer, but it's general fund. And again, our whole situation is really, we've got to come up with a solution to present to your primary bank to be able to get past June 30 and start again with a plan of raising enough money to cover your obligations and make the bank feel comfortable lending you money.
So maybe I could jump in there for a moment, because Chip just hit you all with a lot of news that was new to me a couple of days ago when we got this information. So let me just say, first of all, that Chip has created the kind of the numbers rationale underneath what I knew in my gut to be true, which was that the roughly $2 million in accumulated deficit on the water and sewer budget did not explain the depth of the problem that we are confronting currently. That we had to have somehow we had to have also been out of whack some other place, probably in the operations side of the budget, in roughly an equal amount, because my gut has been telling me for a couple of months now that the size of this hole, if you actually add it all up, is more like 3 to 4 million, not 2 million. And so Chip's explanation for basically calling that line from the state revenue, when in fact what it was part of revenue also already being stated elsewhere as income from taxes, is how we also got into the position we're in. So that's not gonna, all we can do is name that reality and fix it to make sure we don't keep going down that that path this year and future years. But in the meantime, it gives us at least an explanation for how we got to where we are. And so initially, as recently as a week ago, I was still assuming that this week's council meeting, we would warn a public election, a bond vote, on how to deal with that accumulated deficit for the last week of June. But what is clear to me after the meeting that we had with Chip and the folks at the bond bank is that we are not in a position to do that at this point. We don't know enough to call a special election. And even if we, setting aside the accumulated deficit question, we have an additional problem that was kind of stunning, and Chip just kind of stole the thunder on that one, which is that the voters approved that roughly $3 million bond, or in Ann's language, as she keeps reminding us, it was roughly $5 million minus whatever grant income we could accomplish. Even though the voters approved that, it doesn't look as if there was ever the appropriate application or paperwork that was done to set us up to borrow that money.
And we know we know that for a fact. Do we know that for a fact?
I don't know where or how that happened, Lori. I haven't had any moment to try and look at that.
Yeah.
All we know is that the bond bank and the Water Conservation Board of the state, who work together on such things, especially for a water tower, none of them have any record of having been asked to set us up for this $3 million bond request.
Okay.
And that means that the fallacy that I've been working under is that, you know, all we needed to do was go to the state and say, okay, we'd like to have that $3 million included in the bond pool in August. And in fact, that's not possible. They've made it clear there's no way we can go to them for that $3 million. There might be some way to do it 6 months or a year down the road if we've done a lot of our work on kind of cleaning up a lot of the challenges that Chip has been beginning to discover in our books, which are just, in my judgment, the tip of the iceberg. Chip has only started with our balance sheet and mostly been focused on water and sewer stuff so far. So where that leaves us for this week is I don't think we're ready to go ask the council for a decision to warn a bond, a vote. But we have a meeting scheduled now weekly, starting this coming Tuesday at 9 o'clock with the folks from the Vermont Bond Bank. And there are a lot of other people invited to that show this week on Tuesday morning at 9, including Ellen Stanley from Pasumsic Bank and maybe Kate Stallman, including one or more of our attorneys from SB&F, and including, there's somebody else, Chip. Chip said he would be there. Yeah. So basically what we're trying to do is get a meeting in which all of the folks who have been involved in lending up till now, recently anyway, with the city, are in the same space and working together to figure out how to solve for this problem. And the likelihood is that where we're going to end up is having to create one or more short-term loans of a year or less on the promise of doing the homework we need to do to be able to go to the bond bank somewhere in the middle or toward the end of fiscal year 25-26. So I think we wanted to explain that situation to the council on Monday night, but not ask the council to take action because we're just not ready. We don't know enough about how to do it. And Chip, Lori, Carter, you all were there for that meeting. Those were kind of the conclusions I came away from that meeting with the other morning. If you want to add or nuance anything I've said, you are welcome to do so.
I just wanted to, two things. One was the possibility of Pasumsic turning our line of credit into a term loan. So you take the line of credit and turn it into a 10-year term, which allows us to pay that back over time. So we're not looking for that much money, immediately. That was one of the things that was mentioned. And then the other one.
Well, actually, hold that second thought, Corey, because I think we came to the conclusion that we can't do that. And the reason we can't do that is because we can't take on more than a debt that looks beyond a year out without going to the voters to get their permission. entirely because of what our charter says.
Okay.
State statute would allow us to do it, but the charter is more conservative.
Okay.
Right.
So then the other question, and Chip, you mentioned it today, and unfortunately I didn't write it down. It was a revenue loan or a loan, something about a,
So I'm hoping we can come up with a combination from Passumpsic Bank and the bond bank in a, what term they use, soft commitments. If we can deal with the general funds issue, which is the line of credit, however, if we can buy down the line of credit to, I don't know, 700,000 from $1.9 million or whatever the number is, then we ask if we can convert that to a tax anticipation note for 1 year.
okay.
And in that tax anticipation note, they would not only convert that, but add cash flow to us, very similar to a line of credit, but we're using the term, it's not a line of credit for the entire organization. It is for general fund activity, a tax anticipation note. Your line of credit, which sits in your general fund, has primarily, I think, been used for water sewer activity. If we can get a bond anticipation note, and it's for specifically water for the East Tower, and the bond bank says our anticipation is in the fall, you could apply and possibly get your funding to convert that into the bond bank. Then that bond anticipation note is not an obligation of the general fund, it's an obligation of the sewer fund. But when the money comes, it's going to be put in the general fund checkbook. Because the general fund checkbook's paying everybody's bills. So it's really two legs of your debt being separated intentionally instead of all lumped under the taxpayer's line of credit. And so if we can get some of that to be a tax anticipation note and a bulk of it, including the additional funds needed to pay obligations that are going to come up, soon, as being a bond anticipation note for water or for sewer. Whoever's got to have that bond anticipation note, and treat them as two different vehicles, but all the cash is going to end up in the general fund checkbook, because that's where it's not missing, it's all been spent. Don't want to use the term missing too openly. It's really not missing, it's simply been spent. You've spent down all you have.
All right,
So, I think all we're saying is that we should go into the meeting on Monday night prepared to help the council and members of the community understand some of the continuing questions, the new questions we're coming up with, and we want the council to act. The only action we're asking for the council to take this week is the closing of those accounts and the consolidation of the cash in those accounts into the general operating cash fund.
Yep, and I can type up that one pager and have that to you so that it can be included in the agenda for Monday. So.
Thank you, Porter. And just so you know, Pam, because you're the one who watches this most closely, because I'm so late from my meetings in Providence, I'm going to have to come in early tomorrow morning and work on finishing the agenda and warning the meeting. So I won't get to that tonight.
That's fine.
Thank you.
One other quick question, and this is from the meeting Wednesday. For the fire truck, there was conversation about lease. Is that, to find a way, someone who will work a lease for us with that, for those funds? I don't know.
There's a company that they're going to send us the name of, which I don't think I've gotten yet, that they think would be a very likely candidate for us to go to actually work the money on that approved bond. And I don't think we want to bring that up on Monday because it's not an issue until fall.
Okay.
And that actually was one of the small pieces of good news I think we got, which is that there is a way to work that one out without a lot of effort.
Yeah. And it's common now, many municipalities on large apparatus are doing lease to own through a third party. And it's either a fixed monthly or fixed annual payment. You treat it as a lease, and in the financial world, it's still seen as a long-term debt because it's a commitment for maybe 10 years. And for a fire truck, 10 years, $800,000, $80,000 a year plus interest.
Yeah.
And for you, for the general fund, at $33,000 per penny, that's going to be 3 cents on your tax rate. Straight numbers, easy to mathematically give.
So Carter, if it's okay, I'm in a mess of traffic in the Boston metro area, and it's going to be a long ride home still.
Yeah.
So there's one more thing I wanted to report back on, and then I'm going to sign off if that's all right.
All right, I think that'll be a nice footnote too, more there. But go ahead.
Okay, well, the last thing I wanted to double back on is that Hal and I had committed a week ago that we would try and sit down with Jim to begin working on the cash flow document that's going to be necessary when we go talk with the Sumsic and other banks. And basically, we got into the middle of that conversation and realized that we were putting the cart before the horse, that until Chip has done a bunch of the work that he's doing to clean up our current books, and then to make some initial recommendations about streamlining our general ledger, there's no way to do that cash flow document that doesn't involve making numbers up and entering them into a spreadsheet manually every time we do it. And so we spent an hour, Jim and Hal and I, coming to that conclusion, I think it was last Monday, and then finally decided that we're going to sit down with the bankers, let them get specific about what they need in the short term, and then work with Chip, who, as far as I can tell, has become a full-time employee of the city of Newport lately, to work on these things. And we're going to try and slow that process down so that we're not doing extra work trying to create it.
Yeah, the primary goal, again, I started this 9 days ago, 9 business days, that we have got to come up with a way to deal with the Sumsic Savings Bank's line of credit and either buying it down or paying it off. I hope we can actually pay it off, have a couple bucks left in our checkbook, and ask if we can get a tax anticipation note to get us to our first property tax payment. That is not going to help us pay bills for water and sewer. Water and sewer needs to have their own, I hope, bond anticipation note to restructure debt with the Vermont Bond Bank and include the new construction that just simply did not follow bond protocol. And they acknowledge, that's going to be a tough one to sell. We love to help people who need to build. You already built. Unfortunately, that indicated you had the cash. Well, you did. It was taxpayers' money.
It's a pretty good summary, and I think that's kind of the summary we need to give on Monday night. And I'll just say, while a lot of the news this week has been challenging for me to hear personally, it's also true that everyone we've spoken with this week, in every corner, has said, we've got your back, we want to stand with you, these things are not impossible, and we're going to sort it out if we all just communicate clearly with one another and work on it together.
Right. But, and both the bank and the bond bank have a set of guidelines and rules they must follow. And it's unfortunate that the $3 million that should have been applied for and put in the queue and a bond anticipation note just never happened. And so, because ultimately it's going to already be paid for, that's a restructuring of debt. And that's what they were saying, we can't really do that.
All right. Well, we'll know a lot more on Tuesday after that meeting. But until then, I don't know if there's more.
I think
to-
the only other question that, and we don't have to get into a big discussion now, but the one thing that you said, Chip, was we have a spreadsheet that's not matching what's in NIMRIC.
Yeah.
And that's really concerning for me. Like, why?
Yep.
Why? I mean, I feel like we're running 2 or 3 or 4 different sets of books. And I don't care how long it's been going on, but that's ridiculous. And so my only question is, going forward, so we gotta fix that, because you can't, I was, you know, like only partially taken aback by that statement, but, you know, these things that you brought up, it's really important. I can't even imagine.
Right.
It's a good point, Lori, and one that we have to make sure we're remembered. It's going to solve itself in the process of the work that Chip's doing, but it's going to take some intentional conversation with the auditors as well.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's, I just get the impression that the balance sheet is not something that is viewed regularly enough for someone to say, hey, why does that account exist? Is that number in that account justified?
Those days are coming to an end, because we're gonna have a council really wise to the issues of what a balance sheet really says and what we should be looking for.
Yes. Because that's really all, that's
I'm
what the
gonna-
benchmark.
Thank you.
All right, have a good weekend.
Alrighty, I got some homework to do, so I want to jump to that and any other lingering thoughts.
Do we need Chip for anything else?
No, I want to relinquish you as well, Chip, and with much appreciation for all your due diligence and attention for detail.
And all your volunteerism, you know,
Yeah.
I get the bill, you just get the work.
True.
All right.
Well,
Thanks,
thank
Chip.
you.
Thanks,
Chip.
Yeah. Bye. So if it's okay, I just want to ask a question.
I didn't push the notes button.
What's that?
I didn't push the notes button. Maybe it did it automatically.
It's all right.
Ay. Gemini's taking notes. Oh, thank you, Aaron. Kind of for the first time ever. Oh, no, I normally don't say that. Okay.
I just want to ask Jim a couple questions, if that's okay. So Jim, on this spreadsheet, and I don't know if you have it. So things like the recreation trust funds that we see here,
Yeah.
these are funds that can't be, these are actually dollars that are in an account and they can't be touched, like the public safety funds, the recreation trust fund, the Niles fund. These are things that are, what's the word?
Yeah, there are funds in every one of these accounts have funding.
Right, but we can't touch them, that's what I'm saying.
Well, I think that may change.
You can't touch a trust fund.
Right, and I mean,
Legally changing the trust document.
Right,
Well,
but I mean,
The top line, the money market account, trust fund, that is a trust fund.
Okay,
All these other things with accounts that were set up, save money to do these projects.
okay,
And there's a scholarship fund, which I would imagine is the result of a trust.
Yeah.
So that was legally designated.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I'm
Well, that's-
asking.
that's a no.
That's what I'm asking. I mean, you know, to be quite honest with you, 20 years ago, my husband set up a trust fund for his mother. It was called a trust fund on paper,
Revocable.
but but it wasn't really, you
A lot
know,
of times these are as a result of a will.
yes.
So if somebody dies and they say set up a scholarship,
Right.
set up a trust for XYZ purpose.
Right.
And that's when you just cannot touch it.
Right, right.
I don't believe any of these are a result of a will. This is just, these are accounts the council set up.
Right.
Okay? So when the rec fund went out and did an event and they raised money, they put into one of
It
these
went in there.
accounts. It's all donated money. what it is.
Can I just ask whether or not any of the money in the rec funds are money that citizens contributed, like a contribution, so that eventually some particular rec thing could be built? Are any of them private citizens making contributions?
So I,
think the only one that I'm aware of that there were donations contributed for specific funds to the playground project.
Right, and we're not talking about uncommitting and moving where those are held, those funds. Those are not gonna be part of the motion that we are proposing to the council for Monday.
There's funds on here, like the cemetery and the house fund, you can't touch.
Yeah,
I mean, the stone garden fund, the police department, the treasury fund, the justice fund, you can't touch.
Right.
yeah.
this is like such a, probably not really productive question, but I have to ask it because my mind is racing. Is there some sort of law in Vermont that prevents the privatization of the water and sewer system?
No,
Prevents what?
The privatization, so there are companies that run water systems and
Yes.
sewage systems. I don't think, it's quite evident that the city of Newport may not be good business runners of that utility.
Right.
So I'm just curious if there was like an actual law in the state of Vermont preventing, you know, an American Water from coming in and assessing something and being like, here's what we can do, we'll buy it and we'll do X, Y, Z. I mean, it's, I know where I came from, and I left there for a reason. I'm not trying to change Newport into where I came from, otherwise I'd move back. But we had a private township water system, and then or we had public, and then private came in, juiced it up, fixed it, restored it, got it up, and then eventually the town was able to raise the funds and bought it back.
yeah,
So.
yeah.
The thought on that, every now and then when somebody brings that up, is that those private systems cost a lot more than what we were actually paying.
Because we weren't paying enough.
Yes.
No, but yeah, so the question then would be, if we were paying enough, it's still a big discrepancy, because in those systems, just like in the healthcare system, you have all this infrastructure
Right.
that you don't have in the city. That, no, I don't mean infrastructure, I mean the people at the top, the administration.
Right, the
that you don't
layers.
have in a city that you would be paying for as well.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody would really, and there is somebody on the Water and Sewer Committee that actually worked for the district, that the Champlain district, that handled private water systems for a series of towns on the other side of the state. And he could tell you how much it cost.
There's a problem, though, with the public works, because a lot of public work workers are doing the infrastructure. So we've got old water and sewer lines, they might take over the functioning of the plant and do that, but what about when water line breaks? That's part of sewer collection, that is part of why the water and sewer is so much. I am on the water and sewer committee, so,
I think if the revenue kept up with the expenses all these years,
yeah.
the business would have run itself efficiently.
Indeed, when the new rates came in, we were supposed to, or the goal of that committee was to come back in 2 years and see when we added more meters. And, you know, we've got to, you know, we never were recalled back. We could not get us recalled. And we had a council member who said, don't raise the rates for 6 years. That was probably the biggest killer that did happen. Right now, I did raid the office downstairs. I do have the water and sewer figures for what is out there. And I can tell you right now that probably our water and sewer rates, I've said it before, but I am almost fully convinced, are going to be well under what they should be to cover the expenditures, because it is the base, so many people are at the base rate or under. So if we ever do that adjustment, everybody's going to go skyrocketing. But we have probably a considerable amount of water loss. But, you know, the system's old. As I say, at least we don't have wood pipes, which was all we needed for 20 years ago. Yeah. Yeah, you know, but the cores were really good on there. Just they leaked where they met the two, you know, logs.
Yeah, no, I think that's
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about how when the water and sewer task force and this task force will sit at the same table and discuss, and I think that is one, but some other things have to get a little bit more clear, an accurate balance sheet. et cetera.
Yes.
And I think, you know,
but-
being able to sit in on Wednesday's meeting was really good. I'm sorry that I was the only member of the task force that could make it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah,
I
more
understand
work.
Both sides of the.
Well, and
issues.
I think that, you know, we haven't looked at these things, at these possibilities before, but, you know, when Travis stood up and talked about renting his cameras and tasers, I think everybody was like, what? And I use the word rent, leasing, you know, from the company that is going to oversee that, and, you know, and a lot of people go, oh, you know, a lease? Really? Why would you do that? But it becomes clear, especially in that situation where we're going to pay a little bit more. It's like leasing your copier service, you know. You have someone who knows what they're doing to take care of it. And so I look at a $800,000 fire truck or a $650,000 Vector truck that is used for water and sewer, and you know, there are places that will do an equipment lease, you know, and then we're not running around trying to find, it goes into the annual revenue, and the, you know, spreads out over 10 years what we're paying. And you know, my husband will tell you he doesn't like making payments like that, but the fact is we don't have a choice. We might not have a choice. So there's sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
And I know it was, you know, discussed on the regional committee apropos of, you know, finding a private contractor to run the system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not something that has never been discussed, but certainly Paul does have the background on it. And I think that can be an advantage going forward. You know, we just have to see right now, we have to figure out, you know, where we're standing. Sort of like you, we don't have necessarily the best figures. We've gone through so many rate increases, and every rate increase has dropped off the water usage. The difference in water usage I'm seeing on even the known people, the big people, has been phenomenal. And I've only just gotten that stuff and tried to break it down. But it's fascinating to see how much it's going to, you know, while everything goes up for expenses. So,
Two mistakes is the water rents have kept up the expenses. The other one is on the water tower, if they'd have bonded to begin with and then used all the money, grant money to pay it down, we'd have been all right. But now we found out we can't. And then construction almost done, you can't bond for it.
Do we know when, does anybody have a recollection of when we voted the bond for the water tower?
Back, I'm saying back in 20 or 21, I think.
I have a copy of it somewhere.
So-
Give me a minute.
So, I mean, I guess I asked this of Rick, but, you know, I hate to say this, but has anybody been in the office and rifled through the files to just see if there's paperwork in there?
well, obviously the bond bank did not get anything. I think they met. I mean,
Right.
that was sort of the indication that there
Right.
had been an approach.
Right.
And I think Jim was talking about, you were mentioning it to, what, Jonathan or before Jonathan?
Yeah, I think it was Jonathan and before him, Karen, I said, I come up here once in a while and say, you know, we're going through the ARPA funds like mad. And I say, when are you gonna bond for this?
Yep.
Oh, we're gonna spend the ARPA funds first, and I got $1 million grant coming. We'll see what we need at the end. Well, here we are at the end, and we can't get it.
It was Article 5 on March 2nd, 2021.
Oh, I was in 2 years.
We couldn't push it back.
So that was still COVID time.
I'm sorry.
We were still, we weren't having open meetings.
Right.
then. It was still COVID time.
Right. Yeah.
So decisions were made, and who was following who on it?
Right. Yeah, you
No, I
know,
mean,
I'm just, I
it
guess
happens.
it's, yeah, it does, I mean, it happens, sure, but I guess the question is, I'm still, some of this still boggles my mind, like,
Exactly.
like, I'm sorry, there are
They should have followed.
file cabinets in there that I feel like, you know, somebody just needs to go in and like pull every piece of paper out and reorganize or something. I just feel like I can't believe that it was just sat down and nothing. I mean, I can, but Anyway.
Yeah, what's it gonna do us now? It would be kind of nice at least to know,
Well,
oh,
if we-
somebody started drafting
found
and
something,
something,
yeah.
but the,
Can't unring the bell.
yep.
Can't put the toothpaste
Yeah.
back in the
No,
tube.
right.
Yep. And the bond bank, you know, they're not malicious, they were ignoring anything.
Yeah.
Just simply, and even in that meeting, Heather, like, took a minute to really go back through all of his correspondence, and looked for different, you know, different
Yeah.
descriptions of what we were looking for, and he's like, nothing, so.
Yeah, I think they're trying to go through everything they can to
Yeah.
solve the problem for us.
True, yeah, they are truly bending and trying to meet us.
Yeah. Oh, they were
so-
very gracious. I mean,
Oh my God.
I was like, wow.
You normally would expect
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
What do we
Yeah.
deserve?
Well, I think we can work that in, you know.
Yeah, yeah, right.
every Tuesday at 9 o'clock, you're just like, wow. Yes.
Okay,
So,
I am, yeah, kindly, kick everybody out. It's like, I need to tippy-tappy, get this going to Rick.
Okay.
But I appreciate questions, and yeah, we got some creative solutions coming down the pipes for sure. So,
Thanks for all your help.
yeah, no, thanks for coming.
Thanks for all your help.
Well,
It's a thankless job, I just think.
It is a thing.
Yeah,
Chip and I've been going back and forth all week long.
right,
You
yeah.
know what
Get
though,
things right.
ultimately, this will simplify everything, it'll be transparent, it's just getting there. It's
I
gonna,
mean, like Chip said, there's nothing missing. It's just, we've been doing it how we were shown and told to do it for years. And
Are we
Chip's
sure?
doing it something else.
Are we sure there's nothing missing?
Yeah, there's nothing missing. It's all there, it's just. Well, if there is, I don't know where the hell it is, put it that way.
go track down the council members from what, 15 years ago? Good luck.
Yeah.
We had all the same circles back in the 80s. I think it carried through since then. Yeah.
okay, very good.
Okay.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.